Most abandoned phone booths are harmless relics, cracked glass, deadlines, forgotten by time. But the one on the corner of Lambert Street isn't dead. Every night at 2:13 a.m., the phone inside begins to ring, even though it hasn't been connected to the grid for over 20 years. People who answer never make it home. And when Mia Rodriguez picked up that ringing receiver on a fog-soaked November night, she didn't hear a voice on the other end. She heard breathing. Slow, wet, right behind her. Mia wasn't the type to believe in local legends, especially not the ones that teenagers whispered about just to scare each other. But the story of the Lambert Street phone booth fascinated her. A caller from nowhere, a voice asking for help, and the strange disappearances that followed. Theft. After her late shift one night, she cut down that very street on her way home, the fog thick enough to blur the streetlights. That's when she saw the old booth standing alone on the sidewalk, glass smeared, door slightly open. And then the impossible happened. The phone started ringing. A cold shiver crawled down her spine. Curiosity warred with fear. Against every survival instinct she had, Mia stepped closer, unaware that answering that call would drag her into a nightmare she couldn't escape. The rain was coming down in heavy sheets when Riley Bennett stumbled across the old glass phone booth on the corner of Whitmore and 7th. The streetlights flickered violently. The entire block soaked in shadows, not the kind cast by weather, but by something colder, something watching. Her phone had died miles back. And walking alone at night in a neighborhood she didn't recognize was the last thing she wanted. The booth looked ancient, the kind of relic people photographed for nostalgia, not actually used. Still, she forced the rusted door open and stepped inside. The smell hit her first, a sharp mix of mildew and something metallic, something like old blood. She tried to ignore it as she lifted the receiver, relieved when she heard a dial tone. But before she could punch in a number, the line clicked, and a faint static-filled breath whispered right into her ear. She froze. Then a slow, dragging voice seeped through the static. "I see you." Riley's pulse exploded. She jerked the receiver away, but the voice kept speaking, even though it wasn't anywhere near her ear. The booth fell tighter suddenly, as if the walls had shifted closer. Rain pounded harder, blurring the city around her. She tried to open the door, but it resisted, as if someone on the outside was holding it shut. Panic clawed her throat. Then the lights on the street went out one by one in a perfect sequence, marching toward her, until only the booth's flickering overhead bulb remained. Riley slammed her shoulder against the door, but the glass didn't even vibrate. The phone, still hanging off the hook, began to swing slightly, though she hadn't touched it. The voice on the other end shifted to a low chuckle that made her stomach twist. "You should have kept walking," it said. Her breath fogged the glass, but outside, there was no sign of movement, no cars, no footsteps, no life. The city looked frozen. She tried using her sleeve to wipe a clearer view, but as she did, she noticed something printed on the inside of the glass. Words, dozens of them. Names, dates, frantic messages scratched or written in fading marker. "Don't answer the phone. It lies. He'll keep you here. No one leaves." Each message seemed more desperate than the last. Riley felt her chest constrict as she backed into the wall, her fingers brushing against something carved deep into the metal frame. She traced the letters with trembling hands. Riley Bennett, 12:07 a.m. Her blood turned to ice. That was her name. That was right now. The phone suddenly slammed against the booth wall, as though thrown by an unseen hand. And the lights above her flashed violently. "Hands up," the voice whispered. The temperature plummeted, her breath turning white. A dark shape began forming outside the booth door, distorted, human-shaped but wrong, its limbs too long, its head bent sideways as if broken. It stood perfectly still, completely obscured by the falling rain, but she could feel its eyes locked onto hers through the glass. Riley pressed her spine against the farthest corner of the booth, unable to blink, unable to breathe. The shadow outside moved with an impossible slowness, its outline flickering like a glitching video as it stepped closer. Every time the overhead bulb flashed, it appeared in a different position left side of the booth, then front, then right, like it was skipping through space instead of walking. The phone rang suddenly, shrill enough to stab through her skull. She didn't want to answer, but her hand lifted on instinct, shaking uncontrollably. The moment her fingers brushed the receiver, the booth went pitch black. No rain, no streetlights, no city, just endless suffocating darkness. The voice spoke again, but this time, it wasn't whispering, it was inches from her ear. "You're in my place now." She dropped the phone and screamed, groping blindly for the door. But there was no door anymore, only solid, cold surface where the exit should have been. She felt something brush against her leg. Then, something tugged her hair. Then a cold fingertip slid across her cheek. The darkness pulsed like a living thing. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as the voice surrounded her from all directions, overlapping, multiplying. "Everyone comes here eventually." She tried to fight, to kick, to claw, but the space around her tightened like a vice, squeezing her ribs until she could barely inhale. The last thing she felt was a cold hand wrapping around her wristband, pulling her down, as though the floor itself had opened beneath her feet. The wind had died down by the time Maya reached the edge of the service station, but the quiet felt wrong, too sudden, too heavy. She turned back once, just once, and saw the booth flicker with that sickly green light again. As though the trapped voices inside knew she was trying to leave, the phone began to ring, loud and sharp, slicing through the silence like a blade. Maya froze. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to never look back, but the ringing grew more frantic, almost desperate, echoing across the empty lot. She broke into a run, lungs burning, refusing to listen even as her own phone vibrated with the same shrill tone. She didn't answer. She didn't dare. It wasn't until she reached the highway that the ringing finally stopped. But the dread never left. Because sometimes, late at night when she's alone, her phone lights up on its own, no caller ID, no number, just that same hollow static she heard inside the booth. She never picks up. She knows better now, because the voices in that booth don't stop once they notice you. They follow you, waiting for the moment you finally answer.